Ascending forward, message number 34. How we create time. Time is an inescapable part of you. Time is you. You cannot have awareness of self without some sort of temporal perception. There is me and not me, where I have a thought and where I did not have that thought before. You feel that you cannot control time. However, that is an illusion because you do not know yourself well enough. That is because you are stuck in a set of ideas around time, which you perceive as only flowing forwards, with reference to what you perceive as external events. However, this is only in your mind. Your story and these perceptions are only there as a part of your reality construction. Time seems like something that is uncontrollable and is created from whatever part of you that you are not fully aware of. This means that time is created from your unconscious, and it is this part of you that makes up the vast part of you, whoever you are. Time is the result of the focused attention awareness of the observer as it animates its ideas, giving them sequences. Or, time is the rate at which the awareness of the observer sequences its ideas. In other words, time is relative to the frequency of thought. The more awareness of the consciousness of the observer, the more concepts the observer can manage, and at a higher rate, because it can process more data. Understanding yourself more and incorporating everything as you, as well as understanding the why of why you are reacting the way that you do, with no judgment towards yourself, and together with all of your judgments as well, including all of your shadows and the darker side of self, will make you more aware that time comes from you. All of these components will create a frequency of thought, being the awareness of the observer, the frequency of which creates time, or a time rate. Therefore, depending upon the frequency of your feelings, beliefs, and experiences, the rate of time will be faster or slower. So, what you think and how you think, the meaning that you give to yourself, defines time for you. The more that you know and understand about yourself, the more you understand that time is animated by, or comes out of, you. Past, present, and future timelines are all intertwined, and it is where the attention of the observer is being placed that temporarily animates them. All of these timelines are a single unit, and there is a chain of events on these many differing timelines, all with differing outcomes, all existing simultaneously and constantly influencing each other. What is understood on Earth as a parallel universe or timeline provides little understanding of this process and indicates that these perceived realities are separate from each other, while in reality they are a whole, they work together, and they are beyond all time. Whatever has happened to you before in other timelines will never repeat in exactly the same way again, and on the other hand, everything is fixed. No matter what you do, the timeline that you are animating is deterministic, and things will always turn out the way that they were designed. Free will is an illusion because everything is fixed. However, the everything is very complex, especially from the 3D and 5D perspectives. When you make a choice that you think was unpredictable or unknown before you made that choice, no matter which choice you made, you are actually changing nothing at all because the timeline that you are on, or rather the timeline that you are animating, has a predetermined outcome. What happens, no matter the choice that you made, is exactly what was always going to happen. And if you go to what you perceive as the past to change it, in the same way, you will come to understand that that in itself is also fixed. Even the events that you try to alter, you soon find out that the things you do and the effort that you put into the things that you want to alter is actually what is causing those events to happen in the first place. And this occurs because you are a frequency match for the timeline that you are on. Therefore, the outcome will always be the same. So you are under the illusion that you have free will or a choice because you do not remember what is going to happen next. You are only watching on or seeing the movie of your life unfolding in front of you without knowing the destination. All of the choices that you think are your free will are only your idea, and these ideas are from the very limited view of your conscious awareness. The moment that you acquire more awareness, you can see that all of these timelines are connected, and you had no choice, as you are only looking at a small part of a fixed reality. Your choices are always limited in a deterministic, prearranged set of occurrences. From the limited perspective of a soul, as a fragment of a much larger soul, and as a fragment of Prime Creator, you do have an unlimited number of choices. However, these choices are only available from your limited perception. As you grow in your awareness of the absolute everything, then you start to see that you had no choice and that everything you did before was all that you could do at that time. The chaos on Earth today is caused by the very people who are living in that reality. It is always them making the same mistakes, and because of their limited understanding, they have no choice. For example, if a person thinks that fighting a system will change the system, they are mistaken. Perhaps in their past timelines, they have always fought a system, and therefore they have always placed their focused attention awareness on fighting. In this case, they are the frequency match for fighting, and therefore that is what they will continue to create. Remember, all thoughts create. Imagine that you are watching a whodunit movie that has a very involved plot, and you, as the observer, are trying to work out who actually was the perpetrator of the alleged crime. However, there are numerous characters being presented to the crime-solving detective. All of these people have a possible motive, means, and method. The plot thickens as new possibilities are presented or uncovered with multiple twists and turns in everyone's story. Soon you are unable to calculate, with all of the permutations and observations, to make a clear, mentally constructed conclusion. so you watch on and instead be entertained by the story. In other words, there are so many possibilities and probabilities, each having their own timelines, some even sharing the same timeline, that any one or more characters in that movie believe it to be their free will. The movie has been written, produced, and already has a conclusion, but you as the observer have not yet viewed it, so the conclusion is not known to you. In much the same way, for you, there are infinite timeline events, however they all lead to the one conclusion that exists at the end of the movie. There is the perception of choice, however, there is only one timeline that delivers you to the pre-written conclusion. As your awareness grows, all of the timelines merge into one. If you view the movie a second time, you already know the outcome. You know that all of the seemingly separate timelines eventually merge into one and deliver the observer to the one outcome. From a limited perception, there are many timelines. However, there is only one. Most humans tend to think that they know everything. They know all that there is to know, and they get attached to these ideas and make these ideas their own. They hold on to these ideas tightly as if they were objects, solid and real. And then, if you give them a new idea, they react as if you are taking their precious object away from them. They identify themselves as these old ideas and do not want to let go of them. Some people who think that they are advanced, particularly spiritually, have been programmed by one another to understand timelines as a separate thing from themselves. A timeline is similar to a rail track, solid and defined, and can be moved into another positive or negative timeline depending upon the consciousness or perception of the observer. In other words, timelines are a fixed set of lines with a fixed set of events on a fixed progression. As each consciousness changes, so does their awareness or perceptions. However, they can jump from one event on one timeline to another event on the next timeline. The higher the frequency of the events, then the longer the jump from one timeline to the next, hence the term quantum leap. In other words, the lines that are closer to each other are the most similar to each other, and the lines that are further away from each other are more different from each other. It is only when the consciousness changes their frequency to a higher frequency that they are a match for a higher vibrational timeline, and this is when they can jump onto that higher frequency timeline. Remember that all timelines, whether a lower frequency or a higher frequency, are deterministic with a fixed outcome. There is not just one past, there are countless pasts with countless events that differ from one another from slightly different to very different. This is what people call collective timelines. However, they are still looking at them as separate from each other and think that they hardly, if ever, interfere with each other. This is most definitely not so. There are countless, billions upon billions of timelines, all converging into one single point where they all meet, called the now, or a singularity point. It is similar to a black hole because all of the timelines bend into this one single point. This point, which is you in the now, is moving along at its own speed and intention, and all the previous timelines converge into it. And then, from that singularity point, which is you in the now, countless numbers of timelines come out and disperse in front of it into what you would call the future. As you can now see, there is no single past, because the past is countless events on countless timelines that are all different and relevant, and they form what the observer's consciousness calls the present or now from its point of view. And there is no single future, because the future is a conceptual vortex of ideas concentrated into and coming out of that present or now, and it is formed by the choices and information from its past. In other words, the many similar deterministic past events create the future, and it is also deterministic. And that is because the observer thinks, feels, and behaves in the same way, with the same set of beliefs and the same set of thoughts. The observer, from its limited perception, creates it all. Therefore, as an example, it is only when the observer changes their behavior by integrating their feelings that are locked into their biological energy matrix as low-frequency energy and expand their mind by freeing these low-frequency energies, that they are able to be a frequency match for higher frequency ideas, and it is only then that they are ready to jump onto another timeline. That timeline is also deterministic. However, it may be a timeline that will take them to a more conscious and aware destination. When you have a limited awareness, as we all have, we can only see a limited set of things. As your awareness grows, you begin to see more and more timelines that were always there. However, you did not have the awareness to perceive them before. Not only do we begin to see them, but we begin to understand the correlation between them, the cause and effect between them that causes what we call an event. In other words, what was previously unknown suddenly becomes expandable, logical, and therefore known. Timelines that before were seen as separate and having little or nothing to do with each other, we can now perceive as one timeline. If you are stuck in a set of ideas like time only flowing forward, because this is what is in your mind, then time is only flowing in one direction because you are unaware of certain things. Understanding more and more, incorporating more and more of who you are, grows your consciousness, and this in turn incorporates more timelines into one greater, more expanded one. The cause of an event, or a fixed sequence of events, influences the events in other timelines. These events in all timelines converge into one singularity point, and together they form one massive single timeline. This timeline is so massive that it encompasses the absolute, the everything, and this means that it does not just flow in one direction. Time is an ever-expanding and contracting sphere, made up of countless of trillions of timelines. Time flows in all directions, including the reverse as well, and this equals stillness and no time. And from this more expanded point of view, everything is set in stone. As the observer raises their consciousness, the past no longer exists, and their future does not exist either. To believe in one's past, that it is inescapable and impossible to change, is as unreal as to think that the future is also set in stone. Both are fluid and as uncertain as the other, as they are one. The only thing that defines one from the other is an idea in the observer's mind. When you are in a low density, you have a lot of attention on the progression of how things are happening in your perception. That is why time is perceived as linear. The higher in densities of your consciousness, time becomes more fluid because you stop seeing things in a simple and linear way, and you start connecting to everything that you perceive as your reality. You no longer see a fixed sequence, or you begin to understand that there are other kinds of sequences. From your higher self perspective, the sequence would be seen jumping from one point to another point in time, and then to another, forward and then back again, outside of linear time, creating its own linearity for the consciousness of the observer. A progression of events that have nothing to do with a calendar or clock. In other words, you create your own sequence of events or time rate that is different to the lower frequency time rate that you created before. However, it gets even more complex because what is described above is still linear time. The higher up one goes, it becomes even more complicated because events are perceived not only with their own linearity, but they also jump from a timeline or parallel universe into another, and again into another, also in reverse or without sequence. This creates, in turn, its own agreements, its own universe with its own law, completely incompatible and incomprehensible for a consciousness in a lower state or lower density to see. In conclusion, a timeline is a set of frequencies. It can be a set of complex frequencies. Nevertheless, they are specific frequencies that will give you a specific outcome. Therefore, they are all deterministic. The only way to change the outcome of a deterministic timeline is to timeline jump onto another timeline, which in turn will be a specific range of frequencies, and therefore that timeline is also deterministic. Every timeline is woven into every other timeline, so when we change our frequency, we can then jump onto the same frequency timeline. That timeline will also have agreements and is deterministic because everything is a frequency. However, what you do have is the freedom to jump timelines because there are infinite timelines and infinite experiences. Therefore, there are no densities, no souls, and no free will because it is all frequency and everything is the prime creator. Change your thoughts, change your frequency, changes your DNA. All timelines are happening now. As you raise your frequency, You can experience more and more timelines at the same time. The more you raise your frequency and the more timelines you experience, you realize that all timelines are Prime Creator experiencing itself through those timelines in the now. When you raise your frequency, instead of having your own individual experience, you experience all that is simultaneously. You experience Prime Creator. In the ether, which is Prime Creator's frequency of thought, timelines do not exist. Reality can only be relative to one point of view. We cannot tell those who are asleep that they are wrong, as this is imposing our point of view onto them, and this would make us as nefarious as anyone else. For example, Napoleon, Goring, Stalin, and so on, because we would be imposing our view. That is why nothing should be imposed, only offered without criticizing those who do not want what you offer. So, there is a reality for each consciousness, and it is as valid as that of any other. It is their experience, therefore, it is still correct, and at the higher densities, you understand more things. However, it does not mean that you are more superior, only that that is how you have designed your life for the experience that you will have. There is no objective, tangible, and absolute reality. Everything is relative. The only thing that could come close to that kind of reality is Prime Creator itself, the whole. However, from our also limited position, what we define as Prime Creator and the whole is still a reductionist explanation. Tiwana, Tawa, Tiawa.